Please help me in welcoming her to our conference.
Thank you, Joyce. I brought my thesis, so you're going to be here all day. Just kidding. Yeah, we don't got panotean epics ko anman ene hioyan nigan. Sa menutix and toitaman kaksketa ke monia okea kiano muta nigan e kipeta guhtea kiano muta u jehea kita skimno. Ego man muy sketa ke dansisa ke tuhta and I just say that's a really polite way of saying we were here first. That's why I speak Cree. So that's what I do in all my travels, nationally and internationally. Mi chetu ta nuagu maga nagaya og nitsa nagmina kakyong na tamsko ego minaya kagin toks na magse ang blukul sa teminekta utakite apna wow ego benita nehiya wetawa my first cousin Earl. I'm kind of jealous of him. I want to try to do this presentation both in Cree and English. Because some anasko I don't get an opportunity to metunika gwene hiwa maga kita tamsko kakyo giteak netute mag nuaku maganak and all my cousins. One of my good friends is Neil MacLeod. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he does a lot of translations in Cree. I'm not here to offend anybody, but I might offend, because sometimes what I have to say is really hard to listen to. So if I do offend anybody, we must wake up, and I apologize if you're offended. However, we have to become conscious of the things that we do and say. I'm really thrilled to be here to speak with all of you. Maria Campbell, one of our elders and good friends and one of our foremothers in writing, often said, two people in a crowd scare me, the white professionals and our own people. They're the harshest judge, she says. But you know what? I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to go ahead and I was named at the late Joe P. Cardinal's Lodge, and that is my Cree name, translated loosely into English, is Sky Dancer. Maybe you've already heard this stuff, and it may be not new. Maybe I'm just repeating all that's been said, but I ask you to bear with me. There's 4 people here whose books I've read intensively, and I urge you to take a look at them. And I've used some of their quotes, and I won't say so-and-so said a quote. Thomas King, a Cherokee writer from Canada, but originally from the States. His book is called The Truth About Stories. Please make a note of that. He says, the truth about stories is that's all we are. Carlissa Pincola Estes, that's a hard one to remember, but she writes, Women Who Run with the Wolves, Myth and Stories of the Wild Woman Archetype. She writes, story is a medicine which strengthens and enriches the individual and the community. The nurture of telling stories comes from those who have gone before us. Thompson Highway, a Cree and prolific writer, a friend of mine, he writes, Atumuwen, which means to tell a story or to tell the truth. There must be a little spilled blood on every story if it is to carry the medicine. That's what she writes. And Jan Arden, she's a musician, Read her biography. I use a lot of her text in here as well as my own story. And I do use some of my books. I'm a poet. And how many of you know what a poet laureate is? There's a few people who know what a poet laureate. A poet laureate means I'm the cream of the crop. And that's all that means. But I've been very fortunate to travel because of that all over the world. So this is a poem from one of my books called, my latest one called Burning in This Midnight Dream. And it's called Dedication to the Seventh Generation. Ahaw, gawita matin uhe atamunsa. I will share these stories, but I will not share those from which I will never crawl. It is best that way. I forget to laugh sometimes, though in these 40 years, my life has been filled with towering mornings, northern lights. So, sit by the kotoan, the fireplace, drink muskeg and mint tea. Hold your soul, but do not weep. Not for me, not for you. Weep for those who haven't yet sung. Weep for those who will never sing. I was raised here on the Saddle Lake Reserve, went to school at Blue Quills Residential School, and attended high school at 2 different locations. Alberta was my home. Played here, worked here, bent on destroying my life, and recruited in the mountains where my journey toward vision developed. The latter was 46 years ago when I got married to my settler husband. He has been well cremated, let me say. When I was growing up, I knew 5 things. I couldn't have been more than 10 years old when I consciously dug the soil in my psyche and planted these seeds. They are as follows. I'd never be in an abusive relationship. I wanted to travel. I knew education was the key and my ticket. I wanted to have a healthy relationship. And I was going to be famous. At that time, I didn't know what fame meant or what I'd be famous in. In fact, it was just a statement. To have the seed means to have the key to life. However, I didn't have the wherewithal to make another promise to myself, and that was never to touch alcohol. Instead, I repeatedly fell off the wagon. Jan Arden memoir, she writes, life will shoot you out of a cannon whether you want it or not. The universe is a cannon and we are the balls. Here's another poem, Nichimus, Boyfriend. I didn't know how to secure my mouth on another soul. Didn't know how to cradle a head against my chest and caress his hair. In the middle of the night or before the sun arose, I'd stumble out of the blankets, drag my arthritic heart through the streets, and suffocate into my pillow. My big heavens searched their eyes, blue eyes, brown ones, green ones, some tenderness where I could drown my hollow cry. My chin sought those hands that would turn my world. My body wanted more than one night of mingy and fleckless lust. So when my beloved walked through the forest, the clouds burst, and I fell into the flow of the creek that took me to his teepee in a moonlit night. I found my husband in the mountains in Kootenai Plains 46 years ago. And my family was part of the small boys camp in the Mackinac camp, and that's where my parents were. and that's where I've met my white husband. And my parents took me to ceremony, took my husband and I to ceremony on one of the reserves. It was a night lodge, and we got married in that night lodge. To this day, I believe that night lodge saved my marriage. It didn't set me straight right away because I was still a horrible flirt and I didn't know about boundaries. I was learning those things. It's amazing to me how life eventually begins to wear you down, but in a good way. There is such value in loss. There is so much to learn from failure. You don't realize it at the time. Every blow you take makes you taller and stronger. You just have to get up and deal with the day. My late mother was badly emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically abused. Hence the decision never to be in an abusive relationship, as well as wanting to have a healthy relationship, was planted. My family was in shambles. We were all in residential school. Another poem, Loving Obscenities. She always wore those stupid Indian Affairs glasses that looked like the eyes of a slanted Siamese cat. He always walked, stooped, putting on export A, disguising his whiskey breath with spearmint gum. She always wore a black and blue shiner every Friday and Saturday night, those stupid fist marks of his drama attacks. His eyes moved swiftly, examining every visible track, poking and stubbing his feet at the sign of suspected lovers. And when they were together, mother and father, he would walk ahead, muttering his loving obscenities, while she walked softly behind, staring through his head with those cheap Indian Affairs glasses. Many of us here don't know the story of our personal lives. We don't talk, we don't share. And in residential school, we are taught those lessons. Don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, don't think, and don't think. Did I say that? I forget the last one. Oh, don't talk, don't feel, don't trust, don't think, and there was another one, I forget. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. When in residential school, we didn't even know we were related. That's how colonized we had already become. That's an interesting thought. My parents worked off the reserve hauling their meager belongings, their alcoholism, their dysfunction, and family violence. Hence, the planted seed took many years to flourish. I watered and nurtured my dreams. I've had old people say to me, "Agame mo." They propelled me forward. Persistence is more important than anything. That's one lesson. Another one, the harder you work, the luckier you get. When I was in residential school, I saw and met my first Black woman. She was from Uganda, and she brought the stories of Africa and stories about her people. She whetted my appetite for travel. I was fascinated with the Egyptian pyramids and the Nile River. I wanted to see them. I did travel to Africa eventually, and yes, I have climbed and visited many pyramids since my childhood fascination, though I experienced those in Mexico. My travel dream has continued its rotation. I have been all over the continent and in many parts of the world. I was in awe of a fellow female student who had immaculate handwriting. She received wonderful affirmation from the nuns. I wanted to write like her, and I so desperately wanted that recognition, though at times I never received it. You know, in residential school, we were very seldom told, oh, you're such a good girl, you're such a hard worker. We were just starving for love. We were abandoned children. I think that was the first time, that first seed, that my writing career began. The other seed that was planted was when a nun wrote my first paper that I delivered at a public speaking contest. She wrote it. I lost half my lines, but I stayed on stage, persevered, and pretended I knew what I was doing. The things a person remembers are so random and somehow so particular. Some events quite simply stick to your heart and never come loose. Here's another poem, Unpacking the Knapsack. I stood in the twilight, no longer bound by my brother's weight. I left his stains. I've named the one who corralled me in grade 5 and returned his castration, left him to carry his own bakagos. For years I hoped the man whose fumes suffocated me lay rotting in his dream, and wished my bald cousin would bound my arms, my legs, who was terrorized by his dreams. I think this of the one who claimed he had a right to tear my limbs. I wish his muscles would atrophy. I hope the man who drugged my beer and left me naked and freezing would think of his kids as he drank in the gravel pits. I no longer have to witness these greedy serpents. Yes, all this and more to women's bodies, to women's. All this and more to women's bodies, to women's soul, devoured by Witagu's icy chill. Too many weighed down by bakakos, too young, lost in city streets. Gossip flies tent to tent, house to house, waggling tongues on rapid transit, Facebook, Twitter. The survivor is blamed. Me, I don't want my skeleton to be found. I've told, and my telling's been witnessed in ceremony. What I choose to remember shapes who I am every day. I know that. For the most part, I control that. Every day I wake up and feel ever so slightly changed. And I can't go back to who I was the day before. It's simply not possible. The universe moves you constantly forward. We are renewed over and over again. But memories shape us. My memories shape and reshape who I am. I draw on them all the time to help me go forward in life. They somehow guide me through what otherwise be a very difficult maze. It could be a guiding principle as simple as, remember when you did this and it was so bad? Don't do it again. I barely finished high school and eventually fulfilled my dream of travel. Many years later, I earned my Bachelor of Social Work. I go to many ceremonies on my home reserve, but my home resides in my heart. And when my heart travels, I am with her. In terms of fame, I like to think it's because the writing I produce is the fame. It is not I. It is the writing that has paved the way. And the writing prophecies came in dreams. I thank my forefathers, my ancestral grandmothers who visited me. They have been my guardians and my ceremonial teachers. I have met them at and during ceremony, and in the journals I write. That is not to say I am not haunted by my past. However, it no longer controls and dominates me. I no longer am shameful from where I came from. Yes, there are many regrets. And yes, I've been awful to a lot of people, and I beg to this day for their forgiveness. However, I cannot stay there. I have to move on. There are some people who will never accept your apology because they're not ready, and that's okay. And sometimes you just have to move on. There are the people who are still in a place of woundedness, who will never let you forget your personal history. And that is okay. Humility never hurts. And I use my history as a reminder of where I come from, where I have gone, and I use it to share it with others. I think the universe knows what it's doing in a memory department. Sometimes we forget it is out of self-defense. You can't possibly carry life around you all the time. You have to look at it in sections so you don't implode. You are not what you did, but what you will do. My husband says to me, "Why do you keep punishing yourself for being a wild teenager? That was centuries ago." Self-forgiveness is hard. It's good to remember, but you can't let memories hurt you. A dog doesn't punish himself for something he did an hour ago. But people, if we beat ourselves up about something, we usually do. My daughter says to me, because I wasn't the greatest parent, he says, "Oh, if you want to beat yourself up, Mom, be my guest." Stories are medicine. They have such power. They do not require that we act anything. We need only listen. Stories are embedded with instructions which guide us about the complexities of life. I have also had many people attempt to deny my success, often crediting my husband. Perhaps this happens to many women married to professional men. However, it's even more difficult to credit a Nehiosquil for their achievements. Success is not supposed to be ours, though a lot of men in general are mouthpieces who claim women should be honored, respected, and protected. In many ceremonies that I've attended, men talk about the respect for women, but they seldom allow women to speak for themselves. And we've observed this all across Canada. And it's time we women speak up and lead the way. We need more women chiefs. The walk in my internal landscape has had many valleys, crevices, hills, landslides, volcanic eruptions, storms, turbulent and calm waters. It's meant I've had to face my alcoholism, my dysfunction, both in a psychiatrist's office and a psychologist. It meant saying, "I'm really crazy." Like so many things, this walk has been fraught with great difficulty. It's taken hard work, sheer determination, endurance, perseverance, discipline, openness, courage, and risk-taking. Yes, at times I've been governed by fear, yet it is fear that has propelled me. I did not grow up with self-respect and very little guidance. However, hard work was demonstrated by my parents. We worked in the sugar beet fields like everybody else. We had a garden, and we had a pig that I used to ride. Her name was Pinky. I had at that time little appreciation of their example. I saw and only felt and experienced the pain and the anger. Life is a series of flashes. Many people have paved this journey ahead of me and have walked with me. They have pushed me along, held my hand, and became lifelong companions. I'm traveling with one today, and my niece sits there in front of me, my sister. I'm extremely thankful to all of them. In particular, I'd like to mention the late Joe P. Cardinal and his wife, Jenny. The late Vera Martin, she was an Anishinaabe Ojibwe. I went to many ceremonies with her. The late Dr. David Barnes, who was my psychiatrist, and very much alive, Dr. Louise Millian, who was my psychologist. To my husband, my children, I've somehow did something right in my parenting. My son is a physician in Northern Ontario. He goes to the reserves there. My grandson is in medical school. And my other grandson suffers extreme depression, and he's had to have some professional help. My daughter is also a doctor, and she is a professor in Prince Edward Island. They've all been my greatest teachers. I think making good friends is the easiest and the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. My friendships are my greatest accomplishments. My friends to this day are my greatest treasures. They represent the truest part of my character and the best part of my soul. Incidentally, when we talk about psychiatry and psychologists, the word psyche is derived from the Latin word wind, soul, spirit. In ceremony, the old man used to say, "This is our psychiatry, this is our psychology." The wind is always honored. Hence, I have been a born-again pagan for over 40 years. I actually used to wear a button while I lived in Northern Saskatchewan that said born-again pagan because there were so many Christians always trying to convert me. Pagan, the word pagan actually means at the hearth, the home fires. That's what it actually means. Again, interestingly, during ceremony, a fire is kept going during the whole duration, whether it is 1 day or 5 days. That is where we learn about our first spirituality, our teachings. And fire, Isquel, actually means fire woman. That's where we learn. How do we move forward to vision, to hope, to faith? I can share with you what I've seen in my many travels: the overpopulation, the extreme poverty. The poor remain invisible while they live beside the rich, the destruction of the earth, the water pollution, and the world's family dysfunction. However, I have also witnessed the will, the resilience, and courage people have taken to survive. In Mexico, for example, the musicians play on the streets while the traffic and the walkers zip by, trying to earn their pennies. People with squeegees in city centers go car to car, clean your car for whatever pennies you are ready to part with. In this country, it's below an individual to be a dishwasher. Yet, this is not the focus I wish to take. Instead, I invite you to invest in your medicine wheel, the 4 quadrants of your well-being. When you can address these, then you have the capacity to live the values of our communities, what our communities encourage us to live by. They call these the 7 grandmothers, the 7 grandfathers. These are love, kindness, respect, humility, sharing, and generosity. In other words, we bring to life Waguhtun. When we greet someone with a handshake, a warm hug, we are not only repeating the pact signed during the treaties, but we are making a promise to each other to carry out these values. Yet Waguhtun is one of the hardest, most difficult teachings in our communities. We need to understand the deep layers of our language. The land is embedded in our language, and in our language, it's philosophical and spiritual. In doing this, we are preparing the next road to the 7 generations. It is imperative and necessary that we strive hard to receive our language and return to the tradition of Gyukewen, visiting. You know, in China, when I was traveling there in the parks, the Chinese sit around the parks, play cards, they dance by themselves with music. We actually joined a little old lady dancing in a park, and they develop and maintain community. Gyukewen and Waguhtun are not only with each other, but with the land. Gyukean manaya kapmuhtean, with the land. Last year, 15 of us walked 108 miles in 8 days. We covered 14 miles a day, and we camped every night, and we became a community. And the walkers came from all walks of life, from all professions. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences I've had. My father was a walker, and I remember walking behind him as fast as I could because he was too fast for me. But it's something that this community too can do. Start organizing long walks. And yes, my feet were filled with blisters. We are not the only downtrodden and wounded nation. To saturate ourselves in victimhood is unhealthy, self-centered, and narcissistic. We must walk our talk to show and teach, not preach. Big difference. Kiskinawa patun, right? Did I get that right, Earl? To show rather than preach. A lot of elders preach, but then there's elders sometimes don't show their kindness. There's a big difference. In Cree, Kisnawa patun means to demonstrate by action. After all, not only do our communities observe and judge us, but our children become our inheritors of everything we do. They are great observers. My grandson, who was 2 at the time, Yogisagaw Isigasut, was sitting by the fireplace while my husband was making a fire, and the smoke was billowing out. He took his little hands and smudged himself with the fire smoke from the fireplace. He said, "I'm praying." A few days later at the dinner table, he closed his eyes and worked at giving thanks, all in Cree. I have heard repeatedly, it takes a community to raise a child. We have so much to learn. We now have transgender issues, homosexuality, stuff that all went underground that we don't talk about, and we need to honor our people regardless of what gender they come from. And yet parents interfere when a child is being disciplined and redirected by another community person. This in Cree is referred to egispewed, thereby enabling the child's behavior to remain the same. We have so much to learn. Children need to be encouraged to read and be creative. We need to supply books, materials to be creative. Highlighters are needed to underline the important insights they've acquired, and a dictionary. That's my Bible, my dictionary. And dear diary journals to record their journey. They need encouragement, safety above all, and respect as well as our guidance. Compliments make your heart grow bigger. Encouragement is the best drug on this planet. It makes you taller, somehow, and braver. These are medicines that are transformative. Being a parent, being a teacher is hard work. I admire teachers because they have so much responsibility on their hands. We need to know where we come from, what our stories are. They teach and guide our behaviors. They are our historical records. We need to have the courage to explore and ask for help. We need to address the pain, name it, and face it. In other words, we must take responsibility and ownership of the self. Ceremony, however, is necessary. But there's no point in going to ceremony if you're just being a participant. We have to walk those teachings. It means if you are allowed by the person next to you to say, "I'm sorry, please forgive me, what could I have done better? How could I have changed my behavior?" Believe me, these are difficult tasks, and some people have no wish nor the desire to live and make these changes. That is a reality. Instead, holding a grudge and blaming have become a handy escape. When we can achieve some of these thoughts I've spoken about, we have the capacity to make changes within our family systems, the community, and the world at large. This is another poem. It's called A Quandary. I have stripped my soul of the visions, the dreams I received, given them all away. Still I continue. I have stripped my soul of the visions, the dreams I received, given them all away. Still I continue to wait each day, every night for more to come. They dance softly, reluctant to reveal for fear I've given again what I've received. But if I don't do this, what will you do? I think it was earlier mentioned that what good is knowledge if you don't pass it along? Your bitterness will gnaw when what was needed went to the grave without having been spoken. Nimusum and Nukum left us without their voice, without their story of Vimatisuin, this culture, except the little that we saw. Now, I am a nothing person. I cannot share with you what I don't know. This endless search is meant to fill what I lost, what is needed for this red road. So I give these visions, share these dreams. They have been my guides in the many years of struggle. Don't tell anyone of your visions, your dreams, they say, or they will leave you. But my heart has no desire to remain tight-lipped, not because she needs validation for receiving these messages, not because she lacks humility. She knows what it's like to crawl, to beg to know how to Sundance, what offerings she needs to make, to know what she needs to learn from her vision quest, what to expect, to know how to behave at a horse dance, how to give at a ghost dance, how to listen at a shake tent, how to interpret these dreams. these visions she received, how they can help and teach. Each day I am born again to wonder, to wander, to listen, to learn. There's a lot of accomplished people on this reserve, and many of them I know. You take the airline stewardess, do you remember who she is, Alice? She was one of my heroes when I was growing up. And I wish our reserve would honor those of us off the reserve who've accomplished this path. There's many of us out there. I wish the schools would fill these walls with their mentors and honor them. There's many of us from the South Lake Reserve who've achieved many great things despite our dysfunction, despite the hurt that we've walked and saw. And that is my greatest wish, is that our people learn to lift each other up instead of to be jealous. You know, I come here sometimes and to the powwows, and it used to be at Yukaya. My grandparents, we'd go down a wagon, go and visit people, and they'd have tea and bannock ready, didn't matter. I don't see that happening anymore. And we used to shake hands with everybody. Well, hardly anybody will shake hands with you now. We've lost so much of these principles. What are we doing to live and revive what we've been taught? Anyway, I'm open for questions. If sapit tama, muestas, kat kinuha ko mga kanakay hay.